and which they're now grown-ups, and the only thing you need to know for this section is Lawrence, the mad scientist, did an experiment recently where someone almost died. The parrots were eating cherry blossoms on top of a big tree on the crest of a steep hill, not that far from Grace Cathedral. A half-dozen bright green birds with red splotches on their heads, just tearing the shit out of those white flowers. Petals scattered across the sidewalk on the grass as the birds squawked and worked their crooked beaks, while Lawrence and Patricia watched from the steep bank of the parklet across the street. San Francisco had never stopped astonishing Lawrence. Wild raccoons and possums wandered the streets, especially at night, and their shiny fur and long tails looked for all the world like cats, stray cats, unless you looked twice. Skunks nested under people's houses. These parrots were native to someplace in South Africa where cherry trees had never grown, but they had somehow developed a taste for cherry blossoms all the same. Most of the people that Lawrence knew spent every single minute obsessing about what all the blogs were saying about them and their friends and who was still getting funding in spite of the crunch and everything else. And the only reason why Lawrence ever saw these urban twists of nature was because he hung out with Patricia. She saw a whole different city than he did. Truth was, Lawrence was only paying half attention to the amazing sight of these bright tropical birds devouring flowers. Have you ever seen the parrots eating cherry blossoms in San Francisco? It's insane. It's just insane. Lawrence only paid half attention to that sight because he was trying to wrap his mind around the fact that he had nearly erased a human being from existence. Lawrence had barely slept the last couple of weeks because he had been spending 20 hours a day trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Plus, when he tried to sleep, his heart did a circus drum roll as he remembered Priya's mouth opening and closing. Patricia broke the silence. "Okay," she said, "what's wrong?" Her pale knee had grassy indentations on it. "Nothing!" Lawrence put on a smile. "I'm watching the birds. They're awesome." "Jesus. Now you have to tell me what's wrong. I've known you for 10 years. I know when you're stewing." "So," Lawrence admitted, "I'm just waiting for you to tell me what an asshole I was to do that experiment without any proper safeguards. I figured you would want to let me have it." Patricia squirmed as if he was putting her in an uncomfortable position. "I didn't really think that was my place," she said at last. "I mean, don't you have bosses who will tell you off? I figured you were all doing a lot of soul searching." "Yeah, of course. Actually, none of Lawrence's teammates had wanted to talk about the incident afterward. Once or twice, someone had mentioned the accident, and then this had triggered an awkward, protracted silence that made Lawrence feel as though he had swallowed an ice cube whole. "Lawrence, listen." Patricia was looking at him instead of the birds. Her eyes opened wide and she chewed her lower lip. "It really meant a lot to me when you said you weren't going to help tear me down, but you shouldn't build me up either, or it's going to drive me nuts. I have done things that I will never be able to put behind me. You couldn't even stand to be near me if you knew everything I had done." Lawrence had that hitting an air pocket in an airplane feeling. Like, hearing Patricia talk this way, like Patricia was going to open up to him, and this was exciting for reasons he couldn't even divulge to himself, but then he was terrified that she was right, and maybe there really were things that would give him no choice but to recoil from her. Like, what if she was about to say that she recharged her magical powers by drinking the blood of babies? Plus, every single time he learned something about Patricia and magic and the world of witches, he lost something. None of this, though, overrode the adrenaline buzz of, "Holy fuck, I feel so close to this person right now. In his skin, in his scalp, in his chest." "Whatever," Lawrence said aloud. "You already helped me clean up after one of my biggest fuck-ups ever. I can't see how your shit can ever be worse than that." On the sidewalk downhill from where they sat, a woman... On the sidewalk downhill from where they sat, a woman with a stroller was yelling at her toddler, a lank-haired kid in overalls who kept running over to the cherry tree and trying to harass the parrots, who just laughed at him. The mother threatened to count to 5. "Listen," said Patricia, almost shaking, "I curse people. Like, there was this one guy who had raped a bunch of girls, and I turned him into a cloud. There was this lobbyist who helped to block environmental regulations. They called him the Picasso of the Paperwork Reduction Act. And I tricked him into becoming a sea turtle. Sea turtles live a really long time, longer than most humans, so it wasn't murder. Also, these bureaucrats were trying to keep my friend Reginald out of Section 8 housing, and I gave one of them a really bad rash. And so on. She couldn't even look straight at Lawrence. Wow. Lawrence shouldn't have been surprised. But, you know, he kind of was. He felt the steep hillside tipping over, and then he got his center of gravity back. Wow, Lawrence said again. I gotta admit, that's not what I pictured you doing as a witch. I kind of pictured you more, I don't know, going around and blessing babies or something. You're thinking of fairies. If I blessed a baby, it would have exactly the same effect as if you blessed a baby. I doubt that, Lawrence snorted. Babies tend to projectile vomit at the sight of me. Anyway, it sounds like you put the smackdown on people who deserve it. I don't know. If I could turn people into turtles, there would be turtles everywhere. Neither of them talked for a while. The mother had coaxed her kid back into the stroller and was speeding down towards the marina. The parrots had stopped munching and were just flying back and forth between the cherry tree and a couple of other big trees, flanking a massive Edwardian townhouse, screaming in midair. Once or twice they flew right over Lawrence's head, green plumage extended like a salute. I guess I'm curious, Lawrence said. I mean, do you have an ethical framework, like beyond the rule that you already mentioned to me? How do you know what to do? Patricia said, raising her shoulders so her breasts lifted up inside her white t-shirt. I mean, sometimes I'm following instructions, but also, I can't just turn everyone into turtles. I have to go with the situation. And you see those parrots? She gestured at those candy apple birds, which were back at their tasty cherry tree after making a few tours of the park. Yeah, of course. Lawrence watched the red spots on their heads bobbing around. They seemed to be taunting anyone who might want to cage them. I can understand what those birds are saying. Mostly, they're pissed at their friend in the middle who keeps almost getting eaten by hawks because he's too dumb to stay high up. And those crows over there, I can understand what they're saying right now. Wow. Lawrence hadn't even noticed the crows, watching them intently. So you can understand them all of them. It takes a certain amount of concentration, but yes. And it doesn't drive you nuts to hear animals talking all the time? Not really. I guess I'm just used to it. I mean, most of the time I just tune it out. But at the same time, I always have in the back of my mind the idea of what would the crows think? Crows are really smart. The crows seem to be having some kind of intense political debate, cawing and filibustering. One of them shook its wings, almost like a wet dog. Lawrence knew he was about to screw everything up. He should just keep his mouth shut. But then Patricia would know he was keeping an opinion to himself, and that would be worse. Please don't take this the wrong way, he said, but I don't think that that's the basis for an ethical framework. What would the crows think? I mean, you know, the crows can't fully understand the ramifications of the kind of choices you're talking about. A crow can't understand how a nuclear reactor works or what the Paperwork Reduction Act is. Do you know what the Paperwork Reduction Act is? Lawrence was burning up. I mean, it's a law, right? And I'm guessing it reduces paperwork. Jesus, do you even listen to yourself? Yes, I know that crows can't understand nuclear physics, not unlike most people. I'm not saying I asked the crows for scientific advice. Yeah, Lawrence said, I'm just saying that some ethical questions are more complex. I mean, I get it. I just think ethics are universal and derived from principles, and I think situational ethics are a slippery slope. Plus, I don't think crows have much, if any, notion of ethics. I don't think a crow has ever even considered the categorical imperative, said Lawrence. And I'll stop there. Thanks.